This episode of A Conversation with John Conenna is sponsored by Generate. In today's digital age, staying ahead means harnessing the power of generative AI. Wondering how your small or medium-sized business can join this revolution? Look no further than Generate, your strategic partner for integrating cutting-edge generative AI solutions. We create personalized plans, adapting existing AI technologies to fit your specific business needs. Plus, our expert team provides essential training, empowering you to make the most of these innovative technologies. Interested in transforming your business with AI? Reach out to us at generateteam@gmail.com. That's generate, GENERAIT, team@gmail.com. And now, on with the episode.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of A Conversation with John Conenna. Today, it brings me great pleasure as we go back to the world of the author. And the author today is a gentleman named Carlo Treviso, a beautiful, beautiful Italian name. And he has written a novel. And why is it a novel? It's, I think, 100, and Carlo, correct me if I'm wrong, a novel for me when I saw this book, and I'm going to hold this book up to our audience, 112 chapters.
That's about right. 113, I think.
Yeah. And here it is, Carlo Treviso, Siciliano, not La Siciliana, Siciliana. And it is a novel, as you can see in the lower right-hand corner. And we're going to get into this picture and the picture that is behind Carlo. Just a fabulous book. Like I said, 112 chapters. I've delved into a little bit of it. But as Carlo, as I open up, always, what is going on with you, young man, besides these 112 chapters that are fantastic? I want to know about Carlo Treviso. How are you doing, Carlo?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me on. Thanks for that fabulous intro. Yeah, currently working on, Siciliana is my debut novel.
Yes.
I am currently working on a second one. It's not a sequel, but it's an original new story that will take place in historical Sicily. I'm not ready to kind of reveal too many details about it yet, but a new novel is coming.
Okay, great. No, great. I read a little bit about that something else was coming, so you've put me in my place right away. Was John, that's about all I'm going to tell you. So no, thank you.
You got to keep a little air of mystery.
Yes, without a doubt, without a doubt. Especially in the world of Google, a mystery is good once in a while, I tell my kids. I have to ask you, you're Milwaukee, Wisconsin born, correct?
I am, yes, born and raised.
And what for you, because we are similar paths. I graduated from Loyola University here in Chicago in broadcast journalism, even though I became a travel agent for 45 years of my life. I started doing this now the last couple of years. What starts it for you, the passion to become kind of this? I think your degree is in film direction, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, I went to film school for directing and screenwriting.
Yeah. Wow. Well, what gets the passion going for you? Was it high school? Was it a film study class? What was it for you?
That's a great question. So I want to say, even going back further than that, I always say I wrote my first novel when I was 12 years old.
Okay.
So, and I really did. It takes up 3 spiral notebooks written in hand and blue ink. It had a print run of 1 copy. And what really inspired me as a kid growing up, I loved reading, and I was really into Greek mythology. I think that really got me hooked on stories and storytelling. Big fan of Homer's The Odyssey, obviously. I didn't read the actual original book. I read like the kids' version of it, and then obviously all the TV versions that came out later. But I really loved storytelling, that the big idea of telling these epic stories about heroes going on fantastic journeys, the trials and tribulations. So that really got me interested in writing. I really wanted to bring my own ideas to life as a kid. Right. And then that eventually transformed into a love of film, because when I first saw, people might laugh at this, but when I saw Titanic for the first time in the theater, James Cameron, the way that ship came to life,
yes,
real, like that was back in the day when they really shot things for real. He really built half of that ship. You saw that thing go up and down. I really saw the power of cinema, and I was like, that's how I want to try to tell my stories. So that kind of got me interested in a filmmaking route. And then I eventually pursued film in college. I went to Columbia in Chicago and studied directing and screenwriting.
Yeah, you're a graduate of Columbia. I have to ask you to feed off that Titanic thing that you said. I mean, a little bit before your time, but maybe you've seen it now, later on in life during these what do you call it, times now where it comes out maybe once a year. Of course, you could always put on a movie, but do you remember the movies like Ben-Hur and The Robe?
Of course.
You know, it was just like the way, Carlo, you just brought the goosebumps to me earlier in the interview, how the films were to be made.
Ben-Hur, Braveheart, Gladiator. If you remember The Mask of Zorro, it came out in the 90s. I love big historical movies.
Right.
Especially Braveheart's one of my favorites, I have to say.
Oh, without a doubt. And I know we'll get in when we get into the book about the Braveheart. I think you tie in the Mask of Zorro into that, into a little bit of what I was reading. So you graduate from Columbia, but in high school, were you into the film direction? You were into it, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. I went to a technical high school in Wisconsin, and it was called Indian Trail Academy, in a little city called Kenosha, Wisconsin. And they had a communications program in the high school. So I went right off the bat, right into high school. I was starting to study media production, screenwriting, videography, filmmaking. And then that went into true film, into college, where I was shooting on film in the old school crank cameras.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah. So, film has been a lifelong passion of mine. And then eventually, as an adult, I kind of got back into my roots as a writer, because I realized very quickly that it doesn't cost any money to write. It's free. You don't need a budget. You can come up with the grandest ideas in your head, put them on paper, and then the audience does the work for you in their own minds.
Exactly.
So I find writing a lot more fulfilling nowadays than I did with film.
And I have to tell you, you used the key word here, as we were talking here the last couple of minutes, your love for reading. You gotta love to read. That's the thing. Like a lot of people say to me, man, you're always reading, but the reading is the key, because it just develops this, it develops that motivational to keep doing like what you're doing, because you're this writer, you don't write 112 chapters without reading. This is just fantastic.
Can I tell you a funny story about that?
Sure. No, please, Carlo, you have the floor.
When I was in grade school, they had this program, I think it was called Book It, where if you read so many pages during the summer, you had to track your writing minutes. You got a free pizza at the end of the summer. And I thought that was the biggest life hack, because first of all, you didn't have to pay me to read. I was reading anyway. So I was like, I can read and get a free pizza? Fine. So that was the best. It was the best thing.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, just to kind of, again, correlate to that, my dad used to tell me, when you're off from school in May, you need to read books in the summer. And he would be books, and he would tease me and say, I'm going to quiz you at the end of the summer. And if you pass the quiz, I'll take you to Burger King. And I thought, wow, Burger King.
There you go.
Great tie-in. Did you ever think then, when you're doing this film study and everything else, high school to Columbia, one of the best colleges here in Chicago, let's say, I have to be honest with you, it's in my top 4. Did you ever think that one day Carlo Treviso is going to write a book? Was it in the back of your mind that this is something you want to do?
When I was in college, I never thought I would be writing a novel. At that time, I thought my name would be on a marquee.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Right.
But again, writing was always in my DNA. So in school, I wrote feature-length screenplays. So I always figured I would be doing something along that line, whether it be a film or a screenplay or a novel. Felt like a natural progression, A
natural progression. Yeah, it just keeps going. You take a trip, it looks like, to Europe in 2014. And when I was doing the research on you, and of course, I'd like to get into the book part of it now. Besides, this is just fantastic how, the things you did, maybe you don't realize it as the person, but the things you did in high school and in college to get to this point. But you go to Italy, right? In 2014.
I do.
Yeah.
2014 was my first trip to Sicily.
Yeah. And something triggers you, correct?
It does. Yes. Yeah.
And, I remember, I think it was a local guide or something, starts to talk about what we're going to talk about.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I was on 30th birthday, decided to take my first trip to Sicily as a treat to myself. I've never been. I've actually never been to Italy at that point. So Sicily was my first time to Italy also. And I was on a tour, and we were walking through the streets of Palermo, and the tour guide just kind of casually brings up this story, like, oh, and by the way, walking down the street, there was this revolution downtown here in the 1200s, and then we kind of kept walking, and I was like, what? I want to know more about that. What was that? And he's like, oh, it was called the Vespri Siciliani. It's like, don't worry. It's like, yeah, you can look it up online. And then we kept walking. It's like, I made a note. I'm like, okay, the Sicilian Vespers.
Yes.
Is what it was. Yeah. So I just made a note and kept going. But that really triggered me to really start delving more into that history and more about this revolution that took place in the city of Palermo.
Yeah, because even like me, when I stumbled upon you about a few months back, I says, wow, Carlo, I got to be honest with you. I'm saying this to you now. I says, what is this Siciliana? And then when you start to read before I got the book, it really intrigues you like it intrigued you. It was like, I want to get a hold of this gentleman. What did he, how did it get started for him? So that's how it gets started.
That's when I first heard the nugget of the actual event itself, which obviously you're walking through downtown Palermo. You see the old streets. You see what it could have looked like. So my imagination was firing right away. Sure. And then when I looked it up online, and it was this epic story about allegedly this young woman who started a rebellion against the French occupation, I was like, oh my God, being a lover of Braveheart, for example, I was like, This is right up my alley.
This lady's name, the heroine, we'll say, is her name is Etna Vesperi, correct?
Correct, Etna. Yep.
Vesperi, Etna Vesperi.
Yeah, after the volcano.
After the volcano, the volcano was going. I think Annette was in the volcano this summer. I was going off a few times, though. But this is 13th century Sicily, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, and just incredible how, because what I loved, another thing that I read about you was, hey, I want to know more about this meaning, because you write something. There was something written here that says, in every region. So I got to be careful how I say things nowadays. In every region of this boot of Italy, and me being a travel agent and dealing with a lot of Italian people, normally Sicilians are portrayed and perceived in the popular culture in a negative context. Hustlers, gangsters, grifters, in mentioning Sicily. I liked how you wanted to delve into the Siciliana thing. And how does it now? I mean, how much research did you have to do to go back 13th century?
That's a great question. So actually, there's not a lot of historical record around the Sicilian Vespers event.
Right.
I started by just finding any book on Sicilian history that I could from the library or Amazon. I would go to the index and look for the Sicilian Vespers. And when I would find it, I would go to that page. And again, it was kind of like that tour guide in Palermo. It was always a sentence or two in the grand scheme of the history book. It was, the French occupied Sicily for a while. They were called the Angevins, and there was an uprising called the Sicilian Vespers. And then it would move on to the next period. And of course, Wikipedia online has a lot of articles as well, but there's not a lot of historical record other than the broad strokes of the actual event itself. Easter night, the French show up and crash the party. A woman takes out a blade and stabs one of the sergeants. It creates this uprising. The general beats are more or less known, but the details are not very much. So it allowed me as an author to kind of take a little bit of creative liberty with the action while staying true to the general time period.
Where, besides, like you said, we have all the faculties now and tools to look up the older things. I mean, how long did something like this take you? Because listen, if this was a 4-chapter book, I would have said, okay, 112 chapters. I mean, there's a lot of information here.
Yeah.
There's a lot. I mean, how long? I mean, this book came out 2 years ago. I think you were telling me. I want to just tell our audience 2 years ago. How long did it take you to do this and the research of 112 chapters? What's the timeline here?
Yeah. So, I mean, from soup to nuts, it took me 5 years.
5 years.
To write the first draft.
Wow.
And I spent the next 2 years on 2 additional drafts, worked with an editor. 2 additional drafts. Yeah, again, then got it published, proofread, published, and all that jazz. So 7 total years.
Jeez. So basically, this thing basically starts about maybe the year you came back from Italy, because it came out in 2022. We're talking 2015.
That's good math. So actually, I went to Italy in September of that year. I came back, and literally the week I came back, I started the outline.
And you know what, Carlo, what I find phenomenal is, sometimes, it's just like when you're a little boy growing up to play baseball or football or hockey, you'll say, yeah, I want to be like Henry Aaron, who was in Milwaukee for many years. I want to be like Brett Favre. But that passion kind of dies off. But boy, you came back from this trip, boom, and you delved right into it.
The trip awakened all of my childhood heroes within myself. It awakened Homer and Steven Spielberg and Dan Brown, the author. It just awakened all of those creative juices, and they all came spilling out of me in this book.
She was, when we speak of Etna Vesperi, she was the daughter of a knight, correct?
That's right, a Sicilian knight. Yep.
Sicilian.
Cavaliere.
What was the name? I'm sorry.
A Cavaliere.
Oh, Cavalieri. Yes, Cavalieri. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So she, again, from your writing and how you depict her and everything, I mean, this woman, she was gonna be ready for the fight of her life. She wanted to do what she wanted to do for this beautiful island of Sicily, correct? But how long did the French do I use the word dominate this situation?
Yeah, I would think dominate, conquer, whatever word. They invaded 12, I think it was 1266 is when they invaded and had the first battle. And then I think, so King Charles, Ray Carlo, took the throne, I want to say 1268, around there.
Wow. How long does this go on with this whole thing, with the Etna?
The French did not occupy Sicily very long. In the grand scheme of Sicily, 2,000, 3,000 years of history, they only ruled for 12 years, maybe 12, 13 years. So 68 to 82, whatever that math is.
Right. But their goal was to take it over, right? And completely take it over for themselves.
Yeah. So yeah, King Charles, at that time, he had major aspirations to be kind of like a Alexander the Great, per se. He wanted to conquer the entire Mediterranean. He had his sights set on Israel and on the Byzantine Empire, Constantinople. Right. He wanted to conquer the whole Mediterranean, and Sicily was his launching point to do that.
Well, incredible. I know I'm kind of doing a little jumping around behind you, and of course, me always I love holding up this book because this is, of course, placed in 1282. How does a Carlo Treviso get the cover of this book? Because let me tell you something, for the man looking at this book, the cover, and we are depicting Etna Vesperi here, the cover of this book is intimidating, wouldn't you say? It's faced in it's part of the flag of Sicily, correct?
It is. It's that symbol right here on my screen. That's the Trinacria.
Yeah. Did you, besides the writing, the 7 years, Carlo, did it take a while to say, hey, this is the cover I want? Or did you, I'm sure you had sleepless nights with this too, about what it was going to be.
I love that question, because when I first started writing the book, I did a mock-up design on my computer of what I wanted the book cover to look like. And at that time, it was just a black background with the text. And then I put the Trinacria logo right smack in the middle, because in my mind, that was going to always be on the book cover. And it was just the illustrated version you see on the current Sicilian flag. But as we got into the design process, when we were actually designing the book, me and my publishing partner, I was like, what would be really cool if we did a photorealistic version of this, where you would see the texture of the skin and the screaming Medusa face, and you'd see I want to really bring it to life, kind of like, like a Game of Thrones or a Braveheart kind of like image. And that's why it kind of now on the book cover, it looks photoreal. It looks like a real fierce image that jumped off the flag.
I'll do the one. We'll use one swear word in his. What I love about the picture is this lady's going to take no shit.
No. Right.
You know, I just loved it because you're looking at it, you know, you have that sword going through her and everything else. And here's a woman that's on the attack. And I mean this from the bottom of my heart. We've never met before. Just beautifully fed. And, you know, like you say, in some of the research I did, Siciliana is like Braveheart meets Zorro in the setting of medieval Sicily, without doubt. I mean, it's the Zorro of that time for sure. Yeah, Don de la Vega. Yeah,
Don de la Vega. Yeah,
Don
exactly.
de la Vega. It was the Zorro. Was I followed since the days of even the Disney actor Armando Catalano, who was a Sicilian man. His real name was for Guy Williams. Played
right.
Yeah,
the original Zorro. Yeah.
The Zorro, but his real name was Armando Catalano. Yeah. In the 2 years that it's been out, and of course, like I said, I've read about 3 chapters of it. When I got it, which was 2 days ago, I was like, wow, you know, you are attached by this book and this region, and the region touched homes with me because of the many people I've dealt with from Sicily. I really don't think, and answer me this question, I don't really think the population of Sicily from Catania to Palermo, I always use those as the 2 sides, know about this story of the 1300s. You're in agreement with me or no?
I think it's a lot less known. Yeah, I can't remember. I was talking to my dad about this a while back. I can't remember if he said he heard it in school or not, but a lot of people don't, because my dad's from Sicily. He grew up in Porticello, near Palermo.
Near Palermo,
and,
yes.
Near Palermo, yeah. And I don't think they teach it in school these days. I think it's more of an oral tradition, just kind of like an urban legend.
Right. So yeah, because before I had been asking a lot of people about you indirectly. God, I go, you got anybody know this Carlo Treviso? Or, you know, and I knew you had come to a bakery here in Chicago, you know, to promote the book, which I'm going to do in this podcast like we're doing. And I says, boy, this is just really interesting because here I am 65 years old and dealing with a lot of these people, and my in-laws and my mother-in-law and my father-in-law are Sicilian. I said, gee, you know, this is never mentioned. Even the gentleman that's born in, if they're still around, people in 1920, 1925, I don't think they know about. So you have brought something here really to life. How is the book done since it came out in 2022?
It's actually been doing really well.
Right.
If anything, my social media following, so I'm on Facebook and Instagram, that they're in the thousands.
Yes.
And the reviews on Amazon are stellar. So Goodreads also, I have to say, the response has been pleasantly surprising.
Right. And I have to tell you, I even have followed you, which has become very popular again. In the incept, I didn't think it was popular, but I've even followed you on LinkedIn.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It's done very well on the LinkedIn side too. And again, you know, like I tell a lot of people, if you ever watch like news and how our world is now, they'll always reach out to a historian or an author to say, well, you know, history tells us. And I think this is why the book has just been, I mean, well received and fantastic, the way you put it together. But I felt in the early me readings of this book, I think you could have probably went 200 chapters. I mean, could you have gone even longer with this? Because you have a lot to say.
I could have. The source material goes on. I mean, I ended the book, you could say, relatively early in the grand scheme of the War of the Sicilian Vespers.
Right.
So, you know, I cut it off after the Battle of Taormina.
Sure.
So I go as far as the Battle of Taormina. However, there's an invasion. It's the French counterattack. They invade the shores. There's like a Saving Private Ryan style invasion on the beach. Like there's more that history has to tell us about what happens after this event.
Right. Because this island is, how do I want to say it? Over the years is there was the saying like, you know, all roads lead to Rome, but
yeah,
for barter and trade, Sicily was a big part of Europe, like to go through. So I can imagine how you have broken this down. That this is something that a lot of historians are really getting into. I know you can't tell who buys the book, I mean, I'm sure you probably watched the sales of the book, but let me ask you this. If you had to put a percentage on it, what type of person is buying this book? The person that wants to really know the history of that, or is it the teacher? Is it the historian? Is it a competitive author?
If I was going to sum that up, I would say the biggest audience are people who appreciate Sicilian culture.
Yes. Yes.
And not necessarily Sicilians, regular old Americans. I feel like, comment and say, I knew nothing about this history. I love it. I want to go to Sicily now. It's like people, it's really, I would say the Sicily enthusiast.
Right.
Is the main demographic.
I agree. And listen, here we are now. Of course, I know you reside here in the Chicagoland area. We have so many Sicilians in Chicago from the Catania region, from the Palermo region. I mean, I can mention towns to you that I've dealt with people from Alta Villa Medici, Cefalù, Agrigento, Cacamo, Cinisi, Cimina, some of our bigger people that are in business in the restaurant grocery business are Sicilian. So this is really, and I can imagine what's on the East Coast when it comes to Sicilians.
New Jersey, New York. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. We're going to get, here, this is just amazing. I mean, because I definitely have to do a part 2 with you because there's so much to talk about, and I think delve into the book. But I mean, this is just really a solid book about this 20-year-old Despoti and the years in Palermo, and how she this was just something that, I mean, it really boggles my mind that I never heard of something like this. And then you really bring it to life, because here I'm waiting for this book, and I, like it says, read the excerpt, but when I got the book, I'm like, holy cow, what did I get myself into with this great author, Carlo Treviso? We're going to play a little game with Carlo, but I want to tell our audience that we are visiting with Carlo Treviso. And by the way, young man, this Treviso name is a northern name.
Yes.
Yes. So you think your parents kind of went down south maybe to help Etna, or what?
It's from the Venice region, Treviso. Yes. Yeah.
It's a northern name. So when I saw this, I go, I've got to tease Carlo. Maybe, back in the day, the Trevisos were part of the 1300s fighting off these people. But no, this is the book. It's Carlo Treviso, Siciliano, and Siciliana, Siciliana in the feminine, a novel. And it is a novel. It's 112 chapters. And when it's a novel, it's kind of like not a mini series. It's a series. It will take you a while to read, but you will indulge. This is not something you can binge read. You want to catch the whole thing. Listen, Carlo, I want to play a game with you so we get our audience gets to know you. This has just been fantastic. And you can answer this with basically a one-word answer, a sentence or something, but I want to get our people to know you. And like I says, I really hope to get you here for a part 2, because I want to really delve in the book. The book is fantastic. Early mentor, maybe besides mom and dad. Question 1 that you still talk about, that maybe gave you that little push besides them, that you still remember. I know you've mentioned some people in the book, but who's that early mentor you still talk about when it came to this film direction and writing?
Somebody I know, or somebody famous?
Somebody you know, or somebody that you aspired to be? Yeah.
I've always been a fan of Steven Spielberg.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's a great choice. That's a great choice. So that's a good one. Second question. What's a Carlo Treviso, give me 1 or 2, favorite movie they can watch 200 times and not get bored?
Wow.
Like, you can get off the camera with me right now and say, I'm going to go watch this movie. I got nothing to do. I'll give you 2 of them, Carlo.
I would say, honestly, the one I can watch over and over again, The Dark Knight by Christopher Nolan.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's just that the Joker in that film is so powerful. I can just watch Heath Ledger all day.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah. Any other one besides? I mean, that's amazing. Yeah, I love that one.
Yeah. Gladiator.
Oh, yeah. Without a doubt.
That movie holds up for being 24 years old.
Yes, yes. Young man, you keep staying on the same thing. That's fantastic. I love it. I love it. All right. Since we're talking about Siciliana, the book, but we're going to go off a little bit off the course here. What is Carlo Treviso's favorite street Sicilian food or Sicilian meal? Since we're talking Sicilians today.
I just think pane and panelli.
Pane and panelli. Okay. Okay.
So simple, but so delicious.
You know what, Carlo? One day I'm going to take you to a place. Maybe we're going to meet up. We're going to go to a place who has great pane and panelli. Maybe you've had them there, and has great arancini. And that's a place here in Addison called Elio.
Wow, let's do it.
Yeah, Elio's a good pane and panelli and arancini, just fantastic. He has probably some of the best Sicilian food out there.
Let's do a tasting video, you and I.
Okay, I would love to.
Let me know.
Even though I have a caloric problem. I can't lose weight.
Yeah, I got to be careful. It's all fried, but it is olive oil though, so a little healthy.
All right. I'm doing the interview today, and I'm interviewing Carlo Treviso, the author of the Siciliana. If you had to interview somebody, one or two persons that in your lifetime before your number is called, I know what the answer is, but you can't do this interview. I know you want to interview me. Who would you interview?
I would really like to talk to one of my author heroes, Dan Brown, who wrote the Da Vinci Code.
Wow. And you mentioned Dan here in the book a few times.
Dan Brown?
Yeah.
I don't mention him in the novel.
No, I'm sorry. In my research notes, I think you mentioned Dan Brown.
Oh, maybe I've talked about him in the past.
Yeah. When we talked about Braveheart and Zorro in the Dan, Dan Brown style. That's what
the Dan Brown style, the historical thriller. Like,
yes, that's where I saw it in the pardon my 65-year-old brain starting to fade. No problem. All right. I know we kind of touched on this before I turned on the camera, but this young man, really, this is great. I'm going to say two things about you after you answer this question. What's in the future for Carlo Treviso? Because Carlo, for a first book, 112 chapters, going back to the 13th century, you talk about work and work ethic, fantastic. But what would you like to be doing in the future?
Just honestly, just writing more books, getting more work out there into the world, and then maybe eventually turning some of these books into larger properties like graphic novels or films or TV series.
Okay. Are you still looking to maybe do some direction and filming in the future?
If, for example, would I direct? Yes, I would love to direct Siciliana. If a studio would give me that power. Obviously, as an unknown filmmaker, I don't know if they would do that, but hey, you never know.
Just from going to this, and we mentioned some of the movies that we mentioned, this could be just talk about a novel. That could be really a great movie. And I could see that movie being probably about 3 hours, but yeah, definitely when we're breaking down 112 chapters. All right. There's two things in the book I love. Just two things in the book, and it's early on. I'm always trying to catch something, Of course, I had to read early on. I love this part, and I always highlight things in yellow when I'm reading. Perhaps one day when a Sicilian daughter or a Sicilian son tells someone about their family heritage, their response they will receive will not be, oh, like the mafia. It will be rather, oh, like Siciliana. That's beautiful. And then I love this one because I got goosebumps because I've dealt with this. There are three things that are perilous to man: fire, the sea, and a Sicilian woman. Carlo Treviso, great book. You keep doing what you're doing. This was an honor for me to have you on. This is truly an unbelievable novel, and I hope that everyone, you can get this on Amazon. And where else can you get it, Carlo?
Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere you get your books online.
Amazon, Barnes & Noble, just fantastic. We have just scratched the surface with the author Carlo Treviso today. This is a fantastic book, Siciliana, which came out in 2022. Still available because this just happened for me this week. Carlo, this will go out on YouTube and Spotify probably by Saturday or Sunday of this week. So we'll get this out to the public and promote it on a lot of social media sites. Carlo, I
It's been a
truly
pleasure.
thank you. Thank you so much. And let's definitely keep in touch, and I'll definitely see you down the road.
Please do.
Thank you, Carlo. Thank you. Good day, everyone.
On sale now at Amazon.com and Barnes & Noble stores. The Twins, A Journey of a Lifetime. The brothers and authors Tony and Carl Ruzicka take us through a journey of Chicago sports history and their memories of a bygone era. Purchase your copy today.